What's up everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're taking another look at the Metroid Prime 1 remaster rumor. Emily Rogers has came out and given more information about this supposed remastering of one of the greatest games of all time. Now, before we get into that, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell. Now, on Twitter, Emily Rogers was talking about Metroid Prime 1, Metroid Prime 2, and Metroid Prime 3, just discussing the various differences or how those games stack up in her opinion. Then she said this on Twitter, which was the bombshell, and then also she responded to another comment, so we have a couple tweets to go over. Quote, related note, I'm pretty confident Metroid Prime 1 wrapped up development over the summer. I hope we see the entire trilogy on Switch, but Prime 1 is clearly finished. Now, that was interesting that she said that because there were so many reports and people talking about, myself included, hearing that there was a Metroid Prime Trilogy that was in development and pretty much already done as far back as 2018. Now, one of the users on Twitter asked her about that, like, what's going on with this? You know, we heard about this from 2018. Why is it only one game out of the 3 games? So here's what she had to say there. Work on Metroid Prime 1 remaster started around 2017 to 2018. Original plan was to develop and release Prime 1 first, then use Prime 1's foundation with the engine, the tools, the assets to recreate Prime 2 plus 3 later. Nobody knows if plans were changed or axed due to COVID or after COVID. So that is a very interesting take there. There's a lot to unwrap when it comes down to this, when it comes to just the game and what's going on there, the inclusion of potential issues with Metroid Prime 4 and everything. That could be it too, because if you think about it, 2017, 2018, if it was in development at that time, then they were planning to actually do Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 with it. That means it was before Nintendo's official decision to scrap what the original Metroid Prime 4 was. Now, we don't know exactly when in that period between 2018 and early 2019 they decided that, hey, it is going to be scrapped and rebooted. I'm guessing that that announcement of it was planned well beforehand. So I'm guessing somewhere in late 2018 or so, that's when the decision was made. And maybe at that point, Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 and everything was put on hold, and they can just remaster one of them while they get ready for Metroid Prime 4 and hire on new people, move into a bigger facility. Now, that's just all speculation on my end, but that's one thing that I can think about, especially if you tack on COVID to it, and if you're thinking, hey, we've got to do Prime 1, Prime 2, and also Prime 3, that might be tough to do. Now, other people might be asking, well, wait a minute, what about the rumors of it being completely done? Well, we don't know exactly what's going on there, you know, when it comes down to it. I do think that if they did just do Metroid Prime 1, right, and it was remastered, I'm guessing that would be a much better version of it. What I thought Metroid Prime Trilogy HD was going to be was the same exact games. So Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3, essentially that Wii U disc, right? And then just make it 1080p. Make it 1080p and adapt it for the Switch, maybe a little bit of HD rumble, and that was that. But it seems like, based off of what Emily Rogers is saying here, and based off of what she said previously, it seems like Metroid Prime, the remaster here, would be a substantial remaster, or they would put more time and effort into this remaster than they were originally going to do, with it. So we'll see how it actually all plays out. Now, there's multiple scenarios here when it comes to what they can do and kind of how that ties in to Metroid Prime 4 and what's going on there, because I think that the release date or timing of Metroid Prime 4 and when they release Metroid Prime 1 remastered, or if they're going to have Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3 built off of that, that's going to be interesting. That's going to be the fun thing to look out for, because I think that Metroid Prime 1 is absolutely phenomenal. I think if they remastered that and gave me that, even if it was full price, which it's probably going to be full price considering that all Nintendo's other ports, even just straight up Wii U ports, right, like a New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, was $60. So I'm guessing that's going to be full price. But if they did a fantastic job of remastering that and kind of did a lot of quality of life improvements, I think that it would definitely be worth that price, especially like with the maps. I think that's one of the biggest things that I dislike. I get disoriented so much with those wire maps with Metroid Prime, and that's one of the reasons why I like the actual 2D Metroids a bit more, is the map system, because those wire maps in Metroid Prime, like, you get used to them, but man, I don't like them. So if they actually redid those to be a lot easier to navigate, and of course the loading screens within the rooms, you know, when you shoot the door and then it's actually loading the next area, they got rid of those and also improved the graphics on all fronts when it comes down to it. And of course the frame rate was already 60, but of course keep that 60 frames per second, but make that 1080p, very similar to what they were doing with the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. I think that would be a winner as well. Also add in those motion controls from what you had on the Wii version of the game, in addition to regular standard controls, which would be a first for Metroid Prime, the original. You either have to play it with motion controls on the Wii, or that's it. You can't play it with the standard game controller. And that was actually one of the controversies back then, is that Nintendo did not give you the option on Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Wii to play it with the game controller, despite GameCube ports being in many people's original Wiis, and it being able to use the game controller when it comes to the Wii system itself and reading Wii games. And they just said, nope, you're not allowed to use standard controls in this version of the game, just because we want you to play this way. So this version having button controls in addition to the motion controls would be a very highly sought after version of the game. So that's also another very interesting angle from this. Now, I still believe that we are going to see Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3 on the Nintendo Switch at some point. I think that maybe once they get this one wrapped up, Metroid Prime 4 still might not be here like next year. I think that Metroid Prime 4 could still be a 2023 or 2024 title. It could even be a dual release. So if that was the case, that still gives whatever extra team that they're working on, or to hire extra help to finish what they're doing with Prime 2 and 3. If they've already built and recreated what they were going to do with Metroid Prime 1 on the Switch, then they can just kind of take those tools and assets, like Emily Rogers is saying, and build 2 and 3. It's still very much possible that that happens in that time frame, because we don't know when Metroid Prime 4 is happening at all. We just don't know when it's happening. It's still to be decided. And to be honest, like, it does seem like it's still at least another year to 2 years off at this point, a 2023 type of title. That's why I was saying that maybe we see at the earliest next year, at the end of the year, maybe there is a, you know, Nintendo Direct, or maybe even at E3 we get the first glimpse of it, but it's not quite ready yet. They just want to assure the fans that there's something being done, because they have mentioned it a couple times now at this point. So we'll see what happens there, but I'm interested in seeing what happens with this Metroid Prime 1 remaster if it comes out, and kind of how it stacks up and what it does compared to the original game and how it looks, because man, you can still pop in that GameCube disc and you can play, or pop in that Wii disc and play the game, and it still looks and runs phenomenal. Even in 480p progressive scan back in the day, even in that on the CRT, it still looked good. And it really puts you in a world and an atmosphere that took what you know and love about Metroid and then put that in a 3D world. It was just a revolutionary type of game. So if Nintendo spent a bit more time remastering that, that would be more than what I was expecting, because all I was expecting was a 1080p version of the Wii game. But if it's remastered and looking a lot better and improved quite a bit over the original release, then that's something that I think a lot of people are going to be excited for. And I know I would be. So what are your thoughts on this when it comes to the Metroid Prime rumor here? Do you feel that Nintendo's going to go in the direction of a Metroid Prime remaster, where they really remaster it, make it look a lot better than what it was, and release them individually? Do you still feel that they're going to put them together and release them as a pack? How do you feel about how Nintendo's going to operate this at all? I know for me, it's hard for me to believe, considering what Nintendo's done so far. It's hard for me to believe that they would do that, because that seems like the Bayonetta route, right? Where they just take Bayonetta 1 and 2 and then just kind of put it on there. And if they were just going to do that, I think that maybe you would have already seen it by now, but you just don't know how things were affected by Metroid Prime 4's release. So that's the unfortunate thing. But Bayonetta 3 was also delayed, or kind of released, you know, in terms of stuff way afterwards too. So it did take a while for that. So it could be the second coming of this when it comes down to it. I mean, it seems like those two games are following the same type of path too, with the only exception of Bayonetta 3 not getting its development scrapped, then restarted. So what are your thoughts on this when it comes to the Metroid Prime 1 remaster rumor and this new information? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.